So I am Alecia Lawyer. I am the founder of ROCO and ROCO Chamber Orchestra here in Houston. And welcome. We're going to be talking tonight about our concert next week on February 18th at 5 p.m. Central Time. And we, again, live stream on 6 different channels, ROCO.org and so many others, YouTube and Facebook and Classic FM, A440, all these different places that you can find us for free. Don't even have to register your email. You can be an accidental tourist and discover us. So we've been live streaming since 2016, like I said, 2013, and we even reached Antarctica a couple of months ago. So we've had 7 continents that have streamed us. So please tune in. Can't wait to be with you live. The concert itself has a huge variety of pieces. We will have one piece that I love. I've had to practice how to say the name, but it's something our concertmaster discovered. It's an overture to a very old opera by Ingeborg Ronsard van Schellendorf. And I'm not saying that again. And you can say, excuse me, but it's a really short overture for one of her operas. And then we're going to play a wind piece by Joachim Roth, and then the Dvorak Serenade for strings, which is very famous, but in all of ROCO's 18 years, we've never played it. And then we've got a piece by Samuel Coleridge Taylor for violin and orchestra that Scott will be playing. But one of the crux of this concert, and something I'm so excited about, is our second piece by Raphael Nabors, composer, that we are having next week. He's going to fly in on Valentine's, and look at my little earrings, like little heart earrings. So I wore them tonight to talk to you guys. So I would love to start the conversation by bringing Brian on with me, and we can just start talking about bringing new music to life. So hello, Brian, welcome.
Hi, Alecia. Good to be here.
Good to have you back. So, I've got the first experience of you when in our 15th season, this is 18, we did a thing called fanfares, interludes, and finales. So it was for 15, ergo the name. And Mark Buller, a brilliant composer as well, helped curate the list of 15 composers, a wide variety of ages, races, ethnicities, so many composers. It was so exciting to have. But your piece in particular was so joyous, and it was called UBO. And in fact, our huge QR project that we've done called ROCO on the Go, where we put QRs all over Houston, it's definitely a popular one that people love to stop and listen to. I'm sad it's super short, but it's a great piece. I would love to start this whole conversation with your music instead of words. So do you have a second you could play just the very beginning of UBO and kick us off that way?
Absolutely. I got you covered.
I'd like to animate.
Here we are.
Excellent. And you guys can go, that was perfect. You guys can go to our listening room, ROCO.org, to the listening room and hear the whole piece. And again, you can go walk on Buffalo Bayou Park Trail and find it too, which is fun. But that was such a beautiful example of a lot of your styles. I know you have such a wide variety. And I love that in your bio, you have these really fun things that you say about yourself, that you have an eclectic musical palette. I'd love for you in just a second to talk about that. But my favorite little phrase in your bio is you have a charming Southern upbringing. And so that's actually my favorite, because it's kind of like smiling's my favorite. It is my favorite thing to do. So I would love to hear a little bit about your eclectic musical palette and the background that you come to a lot of this musical composition with.
Definitely. I started in the church. I like to tell people that I started mainly in my mom's womb, being kind of grafted in these sounds, because she's a church organist and had played the Hammond organ since she was about 13 or 14. I started around the same time, but as I was gestating, I was hearing gospel and all these R&B songs, funk music, and I grew up with the same thing. And then my mother did a lot of things around the Birmingham area in terms of just taking us to different concerts, whether they be some symphonic or plays or anything of that nature. So I got a mixed bag of everything from rock to, just the most wonderful events like jazz in the park or anything like that. A lot of stuff that communities like to celebrate. And so it just gave me this wide variety in my ears before I even had a chance to go to music school and start actually learning music theory and learning what these terms were and how to put it all together. And then I reached a crossroads probably about maybe 10 or so years ago, where I actually just had to figure out just who I was, in this contemporary music sort of game. And I just then made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to run from, who I was in terms of, the types of sounds that have made me the human being I am initially, and then combine that with all the wonderful sounds of composers, master works that I've heard just throughout my time in academia, and really trying to figure out how can I make a unique sound that is familiar yet new. And sometimes I can be very grungy, but many times it's just, I want to be cinematic and beautiful because I grew up with John Williams and Alan Silvestri and all these cool movies. So I'm just like, I'm not going to run from it. No music. It's all sound. It's all wonderful sound. So I let the story of the piece kind of lead me to how I build that sound world. And I try to teach my students to do the same thing.
I love that. And I do think that recently people have come to not be ashamed of having an actual tune, like actually having
Yeah.
And that's lovely because you don't want to just cut out a certain part of the color of your palette, right? I really feel like I'm also an omnivore of music, that just all a wide variety of journey and well, there's Grogu, so Star Wars, and all of these ways. And I love Disturbed's Sound of Silence. I listen to that at least once a week, and just I've done jazz, and I feel the same way. I think maybe that's why I'm so drawn to your music. I also love what you just said about it's almost like an integration of yourself with your past. In so many ways, I used to be Alecia here and an oboist here, and it sounds to me like you love now to just pull from that huge background. And I had a huge church experience. My dad was the music minister too. So I love all of that you're talking about. So what happened here is Amplifying Voices. You are one of the Amplifying Voices consortia that is built around you, which means multiple orchestras get a chance to play this piece. Berkeley Symphony just premiered it. They were the lead organization, and we get to do it second. I'd love to just, if you could briefly say what Amplifying Voices is and why it's so important, and then we can kind of move into this specific piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was contacted probably about end of 2019 by Joseph Young. He was looking for composers to be a part of this Amplifying Voices program. That was a bigger conglomerate. New Music USA started it, and so they were gathering orchestras, and then they ended up finding me. I just done something with the Atlanta Symphony, and they recommended me to Joseph, who had been assistant conductor there, and that's how we got connected. And it was an amazing thing when I found out about it, because it takes composers mainly of color or underrepresented backgrounds, and it allows them not only to write a piece, but to build a consortia around that piece. And then it gets performed multiple times, so that by the end of it, you have so many performances around the country that has just built this repertoire sort of into the canon, not just the sort of the one-off and then done, but to really allow these pieces to permeate and to keep sort of going into the groove. And so what I love about what New Music USA is doing, they are allowing us to actually have input in a lot of the different organizations that we get to work with, about how to really bring in music that might have not been heard, or current music that is not getting played, so that they can continue to do the same thing. And then I think they're going to continue the program by having more rounds of composers to bring in more music, and then just to have just the playing field be equal for anyone who wants to come into this field and just be able to spread their wings. There really is room for everyone, and you all have definitely proven that with how many commissions that you've been able to do over the years. Yeah.
We've done 132 world premieres, but actually a lot of those recently now have been co-commissions, which to me are much more important. And that's what an Amplifying Voice basically is a co-commissioning, much more structured. It's managed not by us, which is so brilliant. I was looking at the latest consortium of composers that have their own consortium around them, and it's Clarice Assad, Valerie Coleman, Jesse Montgomery, and Juan Pablo Contreras, all of whom we've played many of their pieces and have also just actually commissioned Clarice and Juan Pablo. So it's just really fun to kind of keep in relationship with new voices, and not just new voices, but voices that are in the current, I guess, dialogue, for lack of a better word. And yes, so we are jumping into this with you, and we are going to, interestingly, premiere the scored down version of it, right? Like, you kind of scored it for our size because we're a chamber orchestra. Most people don't know what that is. Just means that you're a symphony orchestra instruments with a lot less strings and not as full of brass. And so it's like a Mozart-sized orchestra. And we appreciate you scoring that down for us. But yeah, so tell us just the tiniest bit about, at the beginning of this, what this particular piece you did is based on and why you wrote it like that.
Absolutely. So one of the main people, well, I get influenced by a lot of things that influence sort of just my art and creation as a human being in the world. And one of my main influences is Dr. Maya Angelou, and just what she gave. She's one of the most beautiful human beings that I've ever seen. And just the poetry is just so gripping. And one of her poems struck me so deeply because it resonates with my own sort of mission as a human, trying to unite other humans on this lowly floating planet. In empty space. And so the poem that really just got me super interested in doing something inspired by her is, oh wow, it's a brave and startling truth. And so this poem was written for the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. And so there's a wonderful video of her actually reciting the poem there. And it's a nice lengthy poem that has all of these different sorts of moments or scenes, if you will, where she describes sort of this truth that humankind can sort of finally arrive at, that basically says what we all deeply know to be true, which is that we all need each other to survive. And that there are so many tangents that she goes into about what human beings are capable of, whether it's war and violence and all of the sort of descriptive nature of that versus the complete opposite, you know, all of the tender and warm things that we're capable of doing as well. But what really struck me was this particular refrain, and I don't mind sharing that with you all. When you go through, you see this, and when we come to it, when we come to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility, and it's constant when we come to it, and it's everywhere, and it's always coming back to remind you of just that great meaning of the entire poem, while at the same time going back into these sorts of silos of descriptors that I just find so interesting throughout the work. And so I tried to do the same thing in the piece when I began to write it. So there's a theme that comes back that I'm kind of determining as the freedom theme, thinking about what freedom would sound like. What does that day actually sound like? And so it comes back in different contexts, sometimes in different key areas, and even in a solo string quartet in the middle of the piece, and then towards the end with this sort of triumphant ending. So I kind of think of motives as musical characters. And also, if you were like a screenwriter, I tell my students this all the time, you think of like a character in a screenplay and they go through all this adversity, and you can kind of see yourself working through the piece in your own life, in your own adversity, trying to find your own place in the world, your own freedom. And it's just so interesting to think about it in that way, because we all go through our certain adversities, and through, just like musical motives can develop through time, going through different contexts, so can we be shaped and developed through our own sorts of trials through life, and through the end, hopefully we make it through at the end of our life with either no regrets or have lived a very fruitful life. And so we just want to really just try to well, I've tried to, throughout this piece, just try to create a world of imagination of really what that could be in so many different facets, so that, not only we can imagine ourselves being in that place, but each of us can respectively, with our own various journeys, imagine that too.
Well, I cannot imagine, well, you use the word imagination so many times, but I can't imagine a better concertmaster to play a piece like that, because that sounds so Disney. That sounds so joyful. And the part I wanted to read about the poem before I bring Scott in on this conversation is, it says, "We, this people on this small and drifting planet, whose hands can strike with such abandon that in a twinkling life is sapped from the living, yet those same hands can touch with such healing and irresistible tenderness." I mean, it's a human first poem, as ROCO is a human first orchestra. And there's no better human to be my artistic partner with than Scott St. John, our concertmaster. So welcome, Scott. And we're thrilled that you are here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
So you heard that, and I know you've also heard a recording of the premiere that Berkeley did, and you've seen the score and you've been working toward it, because this is a conductorless concert. We'll get into that in a little bit. So you're in a lot of ways the lead on some of the overarching ways we're going to approach the piece. But hearing that, are you surprised that the piece itself and his heart, Brian's heart, sounds so Disney in some ways, in the best way?
It's funny. I mean, I love the fact that, Brian, when you described a little bit, you were using this kind of Hollywood cinematic kind of language. And yeah, I felt that right away. I mean, I was actually going to go more in the Avatar direction than Disney necessarily, but you do feel like you're kind of being lifted into these worlds that are spellbinding and magical, and so yeah, I'm really looking forward to putting this piece together, because I feel like there's challenges, of course, but I think that certainly the result from the recording that's already there from Berkeley is pretty stunning. So,
and it is like they did an archival recording, so we got a sneak peek to hear it. But ours will definitely be available for public listening and for live streaming, and I cannot wait. So let's do a little bit of a sneak listen. And the reason I said Disney, just so you know, is because Scott loves Disney like it's his favorite thing in the world. So that's why I said that.
And there is Avatar at Disney World, so they are connected. Yeah.
Fair. I would love to take a sneak peek listen into the piece itself, if you don't mind, and just whatever part you want to show us, Brian, for just a little bit.
Sure. So I'll show from the beginning, just right into that first silo where the main theme that will come back throughout the piece shows its face and then goes away for a while.
Sure.
So sure. I do have a bit of the score up. Of course, Zoom always puts the things right in front of the controls. Forgive me, I'm trying to figure out how to hide it so that I can actually play.
Oh, right, I see what you're saying.
Oh, I can do it this way. Alrighty. Let's see. All right.
great.
Nice.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's so fun. It does. It sounds like we're going on an adventure. So, and
Yeah.
I know
Sorry.
unique. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I mean, from a conductorless perspective, what I love about what you've created is this constant rhythmic element that I
Yeah.
think is fantastic for sort of binding us together, because there's, well, or frequently through the piece, there's that bada, 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 you know, that we can really latch onto as a beat, which, you know, the conductor would just be showing that anyway, you know, exactly in time. So in a way, we can zero in on that listening, and you have it, you know, in the drum kit a lot, which is, you know, kind of immediately a timbre that we could all follow. I mean, I will say that the challenging part is the tempo, you know, being so fast, and, you know, sometimes in a large space, it's very difficult for us to, you know, if you start listening, you know, to trumpets and horns, you know, then we get behind and they get behind us, and pretty soon it's a bad circle of, you know, everybody dragging. So, you know, there's certainly challenges, but I love the fact that we're able to, you know, have this constant rhythm that's energizing, exciting, and I think that's really gonna. So I assume that's probably by design.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you for that.
I was like, please remember this is conductorless. So that was one of the things you were thinking about when you were designing this one. But the approach that you would take, Scott, you are thinking about it being conductorless. So talk about that for a second. You have other pieces. The Dvorak's very familiar. The RAF that we're going to play is not maybe is familiar, but it's in familiar language. And then the Ingeborg von Sellendorf, which I'm just going to keep saying over and over again, is also very familiar language from the 1800s. But this, how is your approach different as a conductorless situation to rehearse it than it is with a conductor?
Well, I think that the rehearsal style is very different, conductorless, because I mean, I do not become the conductor, like zero. I don't do that. I mean, I can show things. But at the same time, what I hope to do is engender a kind of, you know, democratic feeling that everybody can ask for what they need, basically in terms of, you know, like if somebody says, oh my God, I need a big cue at measure, you know, whatever, 152, you know, that's the kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. We can try to arrange that, but it doesn't even have to be me. You know, it can be something where our principal flute player will say, hey, I'm going to give that cue. And then so it's a lot of working out these details. There are sometimes, you know, a conductor might have a lot of it pre-planned, and you know, we do have a luxury of one extra rehearsal, so we can spend a little time figuring out how to delegate these responsibilities. But I really, you know, I don't plan on being the person that, you know, sets up there and goes, well, we're going to count this way. You know, it's a very much a group effort to make it happen. And I think that's the magic of conductorless, is that everybody in the orchestra suddenly feels like they have more to contribute. And they have to really get the listening ears on, you know, on super high, because, you know, the only way we can stay together is by constantly listening to each other, and following the visual cues, because, you know, like I was saying a minute ago, the audio cues can get us behind very easily. So we also have to really pay attention to the breathing and the motions of cueing.
Yes. So some of the questions that Greta has written out, you've basically answered. All of you have answered without me even asking you, which is awesome, because Greta is the best researcher. Greta Rimpo, our marketing director, who runs all this tech for us. Brilliant questions. But that is one of the big pieces of the breathing together and the physicality of the performance. What we love to do, and just so you know, audience out there, if you come, we're going to reinstate what we do is put 4 audience members inside the orchestra for one of the pieces on the program, so you can really get the sense of the deep physicalness of what we do, right? You get those chronic pains in your arm from holding up the instruments and being into what you're doing. But the breathing is interesting because of the composition, and a piece that I'd love Brian to come on and talk about, this really unusual flute beatbox thing going on. I'm sad you didn't give it to the oboe too. I always like to do wacky things. This isn't wacky, it's fabulous. I just mean I love percussion too. So I'm sad. I may just kind of join them. But please tell me a little bit more about what this flute beatboxing is and demonstrate it if you can.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sad I didn't give it to the oboe as well. I had people in the past like take their reeds off and just like blow through to make air effects, which is really, really fun. But this piece is actually a part of a triptych of pieces. The other two orchestral works, Onward and Pulse, have this beatboxing effect. And I'm starting to become known as the beatbox person to most orchestras that end up playing my music. As soon as any flutist sees my name, they know that they have to end up doing it. But I ran across this wonderful technique when I was in graduate school, where the flutist basically will speak into the mouthpiece on the syllables given, and it makes different sort of timbral shifts, so they can go ka or tu, or or any level of just sort of combination of words, whether it be ta, ku, ko, anything that you can kind of think of that would make that kind of percussive sort of snap into the mouthpiece. And sometimes I like to do it where I'll have like, you'll have a shush vowel or some type of mouth and go into the syllable. So you'll say sh or something like that. And so a lot of times to kind of propel the orchestra into the next downbeat, we'll have like a pickup that has a rush of air and then a pop on that downbeat. And a lot of times when you do this in combination of like a hi-hat or something, you really get a nice snap sound. Sometimes you can do it where the pop happens and then a hi-hat hits, and then as well as like some wire brush on a cymbal does the same thing, and a snap hits all at the same time. And it's a really cool sort of mixture of effects, but I just love using it a lot.
That's really fun. Well, so what I love about interacting with composers, and I guess out of the 132 commissions, it's really been about 70 or 75 composers, is this idea of, well, what about trying this? And, could we do this, or asking questions and actually having an effect on the piece. But it is dangerous to give composers some ideas. And one example is Derek Brummel and I have known each other decades. And one time on a hill in a festival, I'm like, look, I can play the oboe without the reed and buzz into it, and it sounds like a horn. And he's like, I'm going to write for that. And I said, no, you won't. So the danger is there, but I do love this idea. And I know Brooke can't wait to be playing that. There's a couple of questions that have come in. And so this is one back to you a little bit, Scott. In rehearsal, and it goes a little deeper from what you were talking about. In rehearsal, a conductor really shapes the sound style and balance among the various instrument sections. And you talked about it kind of becoming more of a democratic way. And yet at some point, somebody has to be the one that says, this is kind of the road we're going to go on. So describe that, because there is a group in New York called Orpheus that has that down pat. We don't play that way often. And so it is kind of jumping straight into this, everyone can say something, but how do we get some stuff done?
Right. I know that Orpheus has a very like kind of strict way of doing things. I think, of course, ultimately, if there's, a decision that needs to be made, then yes, I'd be happy to make it. But I don't think we'll really get to that point. I mean, I think everybody wants the orchestra to be at their top. And actually, I've found when there is conductorless, people really take so much more care and pride in what they're doing. And so I think when we're all working to that goal of making a fabulous concert experience, that we will find our way through any problems that will come up. It's true that the big scope of the piece, I mean, I think that's one of those things where just by trying, I mean, again, we can try out what people would like to do. If the brass section is like, hey, this is not working for us, can we try rebalancing? Of course, let's try it. And I think it'll be obvious, and especially with Brian, being present, he can be our ears out of the audience, right? Tell us what's working, what's not. Can you hear everything? So I'm actually not worried at all about kind of balance and interpretation. You know, I'm always just worried about, you know, just the kind of like the nuts and bolts thing, right? I want us all to be feeling pulse together, and you know, that can be a challenge.
It has, and that's why we usually start with a piece that is not necessarily familiar, like the Ingeborg von Sollendorf. Whoop, I'm not saying it right now. I'm tripping it up. I'm going to have to go practice. But the overarching of the piece, it would be interesting, Brian, for you just to kind of talk about, first of all, when you started this piece and when you write pieces, do you start at the keyboard? Do you start in your head? Do you start with sketches? Everybody has their own kind of path, or is every piece you do individual? So I'd love to hear that. And then for this particular piece, if you could just briefly go over the structure of the 17-minute piece.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it usually always starts with like pure emotion. And I'm thinking, how in the world, you know, do I go from this feeling, and then all of a sudden from the feeling, something happens in my brain. I start to hear the sounds that come from that feeling. So it starts to get birthed out of, you know, my core. So I always tell my students, like, right from the heart, but it's like, how do you do that? But it's like, it starts with that emotion. So I knew I wanted it to be quick. And it kind of went hand in hand, not only with the conductorless portion of it, but I knew I wanted this to be sort of a fast paced kind of push into that theme, if you will. So I knew I wanted a theme. So I knew that it needed to be quick, a little bit quiet in the beginning, not totally, but something needed to be sort of mysterious, like the freedom was coming, the daybreak is on its way. So that's what gave me the idea for this. So I wanted it to sound like a riser, if you will, that constantly kept building into this sort of breaking out, this daybreak. So that informs it, emotions, words, all of that. And then I start thinking, what can I use to give me that sort of quick pitter patter? And I'm like, ooh, I definitely want a drum set. Because just that constant motion is so incredibly important in this work. And then I'm like, okay, thin string textures to create the mysteriousness. So everything sort of kind of emerges from what the piece in my brain, you know, needs to evoke along the way. And so that's how I get ideas from what instruments I'm using and whatnot. In terms of just the entire scope of the work, it's just like that. And it's an interesting little form. It has a lot of stuff returning. It's not necessarily like a run note. It's kind of written in a way of like very rhapsodic, but it has almost Fantasia-like with things returning along the way, but a true journey. So you get this wonderful build-up section to this giant theme that comes out, and then it kind of has another section that kind of, if you were telling a story, describes what this whole journey is about, keeps pushing, and the colors keep changing. And then eventually we get to another climax, and then the whole cycle repeats again. And then the next time it ends, the melody comes back again in a different key area, leads you to a different place. And then it starts again. And then that time, instead of going into that theme, it subverts the audience's attention and then leads into this very placid, sort of beautiful version of that theme again, with the solo string quartet coming out. And then they go back once more, and then there's a little cadenza at the end where things sort of switch up, and then it goes and pushes towards the ultimate sort of level of that freedom to end the piece. So it's an interesting sort of mixed bag, but with all the familiar elements sort of coming back in different ways.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. That description is amazing. I just wanted to comment on that, you know, because of course, with all the rhythm on the outside, but these rhapsodic solo string sections are gorgeous, and I was really struck by the number of different textures that you have. Like, so you have if you like solo violin and solo cello. And then you have violin and cello together, and then there's viola mixed in with and then there's the quartet. So it's yeah, like it's kind of like a really rich meal for all of us on the front stands. Like there's a lot to dig into there. So so thank you for that. It's
Really great roller coaster. I mean, I love roller coasters, but that's what I feel like on this, especially the ride up to it, like the Hulk when you're about to ride up and then you take off. That's what this sounds like and feels like to me, which is so joyful. And so I'd love to know about your most important compositional influences as far as composers that I know you talked about your styles, but maybe just a handful of composers that you want to work with or have worked with or admire in the past, present, or future.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of living composers. One main one, a couple of few ones that have had an extreme impact on just my career and just everything I've done in my life up to this point. One being Gabriella Lena Frank. She's like a composer mom to so many of us young folks coming up, but she really has inspired me and just loved on me and just pushed me along for sure. I had several opportunities to have mentorship from her, so she's been an incredible force of nature in my life. Definitely Jennifer Higdon has been another one of those people I can just, message and call from afar, and she, can always give some wonderful advice. Just so many people. Carl Vine, actually in Australia, has been a wonderful influence on me. I got a chance to learn his music when I was just finishing up graduate school, and I actually went on a Fulbright. Went to Australia, about our third session together at Sydney Conservatorium. COVID hit, and we got all these mandates to come home. And so my Fulbright was kind of cut short, but incredible music. And I told him, I said, I'm definitely going to work on getting more of your music performed in the States, because it just needs to be. A lot of the pianists and the flutists know his music, but his orchestral stuff is really beautiful. And just other people, yeah, absolutely. Throughout history too, Nina Simone, Duke Ellington, all of the jazz greats, even pianist Art Tatum, who did these amazing arrangements, and Oscar Peterson, the list goes, Snarky Puppy, just bands even. The Funky Knuckles, Tank and the Bangers, all of these people. Yeah, I could go on forever. Gladys Knight. Patti LaBelle. Yeah.
So good. No, that's what's so fun, is just finding all the different skeins and just weaving things together in different colors with different fabrics. It's just so exciting. And I know we're going to look forward to that next week. So I need to probably close up. We are at our time that we said we were going to be, but thank you for joining us. So this concert is next Saturday, the 18th at 5 p.m. Central. You can live stream us on so many channels at ROCO.org and on YouTube and Facebook at ROCO Houston. You just search for us. And then it will be up available for free listening afterward. And then we'll put it all in our listening room at ROCO.org. So you can have a wide variety of places to listen and interact. And when you are live streaming us, you can ask questions. We'll get them to us on stage. We'll try to answer some things potentially. So there is a really way that we are interacting with you, because this is living and real, and you can't Zoom with Beethoven. And so that's why this is so important, to have dialogue and conversation. So we cannot wait to welcome your voice into what we do this next week. I will see you both probably on Valentine's Day, which is very exciting. And we can't wait to play all this for you guys out there in the world. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to it.